Now introducing the Minor Wisdom Trio!
Minor Wisdom!
Tony Award nominated lighting designer Jennifer Schriever is on this week. I geeked out a little bit having her on, and the backstory, real quick, the backstory is I'm in this master's program at Texas A&M Commerce, and one of our projects, or really the only project, one of our projects in one of the classes I took this summer was to just do a little bit of research, a week-long kind of research thing on a designer. And right or wrong, this project was very vague, and it said, they said you can do a designer you already know, or do somebody you've never heard of before. And it's not that I hadn't heard of Jennifer Schriever. It's her name was rather prominent in the news very recently because of her Tony nomination with A Strange Loop. And so I thought, well, why not focus on her? And so I do this thing where it's kind of old school, where you reach out to the person to try to talk to them, to get to know them. And so I did. I literally reached out to her people, and they replied within, I think, a day and a half or something like that, and included her in the reply, and then just started a conversation with her, and we scheduled some time to chat, and she was amazingly gracious and allowed me to chat with her on the record and sort of do some focus of what this podcast is designed to do, and that is kind of the educational element to it. So we had a great chat, and I geeked out a little bit. No offense to Jennifer Schriever, but she's not Beyonce, so I didn't feel like I was talking to somebody that was just completely out of my stratosphere, but to be talking to a Tony-nominated lighting designer as myself being a lighting designer and somebody, and our ages are not far off, so we have similar backgrounds and all that stuff, and so it was just really, really fun to chat with her, and I hope that it leads to this idea that I have. There are a couple of people that have been pushing me to create content behind a paywall. And I am not opposed to it, but it is something that I just, it's that imposter syndrome thing. It's something that I don't know what I would create. And so then it finally dawned on me after talking to her is that I could try to reach out to more Broadway designers and actors and producers and directors and things like that. And, if I get 1 out of 10 that say yes, then that's something that I could put behind a paywall and put sort of more premium content, if you will, on like a Patreon or something like that. So that may come around. That may happen at some point. What did happen this week is that I started teaching a class at the University of Houston. I started an adjunct role at the University of Houston. Go Cougs. Whose house? Cougs house. That's right. Anyway, I started a class called Stage Design for Educators. I didn't start the class, but the class started this week. I don't know when the class started, on the record, but Gary Cooper left, and that's, some news that he broke on his Facebook. I knew it a couple weeks ago, but and he replaced his classes that he was teaching. He hasn't replaced the job yet, but the classes that he was teaching, he replaced with some really amazing teachers as well as myself. So I had an absolute blast doing adjunct work or teaching. I'm doing the whole semester with these 6 students, and it was just like, it was everything that I want it to be as someone that wants to teach on the college level, not necessarily going away from my current job, but picking up a class or 2 every semester would be amazing. And talking to college kids, there's just, yes, there's very little money in teaching at the college level unless you're tenured. That's not why I would want to do it. It's just you you don't have any stress. I mean, the stress is almost your own personality. Just don't say the wrong thing. Just don't screw up and be stupid. But as evident at another school just north of Houston. But my situation is I just get to sit and talk with 6 kids that want to be theater educators, and it's really, 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 really fun. It was, or at least the first day was really fun. The other thing that's happening is this week I'm going to Los Angeles to walk my first red carpet, because I think I talked about this already, but I did sound for a movie almost 2 years ago, and that movie is finally getting its big premiere. It's been on the festival gambit for a while, and it did win a couple of things, but it's finally premiering, big time. And so I thought, I was talking to my wife about going, and she said absolutely. So it's the first and maybe only red carpet that I experience in my lifetime. So I am going. I'm wearing a very bold outfit. Why not? You only do it once, unless you're like a celebrity, and then you do it like all the time. But I'm going to have fun this week, so I'll have some stories next week as well. But that's it, really. Sign up for TXETA. Please sign up for TXETA. There are lots of exhibitors. The exhibitor floor is almost sold out. That's really cool, except for colleges and universities. There aren't as many as I would like to see, but as far as like people to come talk to that are going to have some swag, some great companies that are going to be there to make your life better as an educator, all that good stuff, that's pretty much sold out. So please sign up. Come on. I'm teaching too. There are lots of actually really great workshops that are going to happen at TXCTA, and I know they get a bad rap of like repeating workshops, and yeah, it's happening again, but there are some repetitive workshops and some people that are really amazing that have been on this podcast that got their workshops denied that I know would have killed it, but there are going to be some really great ones, some new ones, some fresh ones, because I do know a couple of people that got approved, and so that's really cool. Yes, there are going to be some of the same things there. Just skip them. Or if you're new to teaching, go to them. There's probably a reason that they bring back repetitive, repeating workshops. Not done at TTEC, but it is done at TXCTA in just 2 different formulas and formats. Anyway, I have talked enough. I'm super excited to release this interview that I had a few weeks ago with the Tony Award nominated A Strange Loop lighting designer Jennifer Schriever. Enjoy.
My name is Jen Schriever. I am a lighting designer. I live in New York City. I'm sitting in my room in Washington Heights. My son is out in the living room watching TV. I grew up in New Jersey, right outside the city, but we didn't watch theater at all. We weren't a theater family. I found theater randomly. Honestly, I think actually due to my parents getting divorced. My parents got divorced when I was 11, and it like coincided with like me like randomly signing up for a theater group. I was never interested in performing, but I was interested in theater. So because I grew up so close to New York City, I was able, like this theater group in middle school was able to take us once a year. So I saw 2 shows in the city, 2 Broadway shows. And I remember being like, totally knocked over and influenced and obsessed and curious about stagecraft and design. And I feel like a lot of folks who find their way into theater, especially in high school, are like either looking to be like on like the star or looking for like a crowd. And I think I was looking for my people. So I found the theater in high school, and we happened to have this really quite like you can boop boop. You can take this out. Sorry, I'm not going to make you edit anything. We happen to have this quite sophisticated theater program in terms of tech theater. Like there was a guy, a theater guy. And it was all the students created the work. They built the set, they did the lights, and if they were interested, he sort of guided them into design. So I got to start to design in high school, and this theater guy was like a local stagehand that just had side gigs doing these high school gigs. But he was a real artist. So he was the lighting designer. His name was Jared Saltzman. He's still around in the North Jersey area, being a stagehand, and he had an artist's eye, and I saw what he was doing when he was doing lighting design, and I thought, like, I'm obsessed. I want to do this. So he sort of took me under his wing and let me mess up and play and mess around. And I knew in high school that I wanted to do lighting. So it's funny now, I'm 42. So it's, 20 plus years later since high school. And all my friends or folks I run into from high school are like, you're still doing it. But I ended up having no idea where you learn theater lighting. I don't think I think he had gone to NYU. He was quite a bit older than I was. And I didn't know, but I didn't really know how to do that. And that, like, my family didn't have a ton of money. So, like, a fancy school was sort of out of the question. And I didn't quite know what to do. Then, by the time I was a senior, I had some friends at Emerson, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. I visited them. I had no idea how expensive it was. And what I did when I was 18 is I was like, loans, give me a loan. And they're like, here's a huge amount of money. My parents were like, absolutely not. We cannot pay for this. And I just took out a loan all by myself.
I've lost you.
I had some friends who were older and they got jobs at the Arizona Theater Company. And I was 19 years old and I was like, I'm coming with you. So I moved to Tucson, Arizona for 2 years. Again, my mom being like, what are you doing? What's happening? And lived in Tucson and worked at the Arizona Theater Company. I learned by doing. Like so for me, going to Arizona and just working, they just hired me as an overhire electrician. I got my only other gig I've ever had outside of theater, which was working at a Trader Joe's. And from 19 to 21, I just worked on every show there, absorbed what the designers were doing, absorbed how the process of theater happens. And then realized I really want to go back to school, and I wanted a mentor. I wanted, or hoped for one. And when I was in high school, I saw a lot of shows in the city. So basically, I befriended the older kids, and they were like, come to the city, we're going to see shows. So I saw a ton of shows that were happening off Broadway and on Broadway and weird niche theaters. So I sort of had an idea of who the designers were at the time, whose work I was interested in. And one of those people was Brian McDevitt, who now is like six Tonys or seven Tonys, and is my dear friend. But at the time, he was just sort of like this guy whose lighting I liked. And I saw he was teaching at SUNY Purchase, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go there. So I applied, and I got in. And by the time I got there, he was sort of on his way out. Like, his career was really taking off, and he was like becoming more of like an adjunct or a visitor and less of the, head of the lighting program. So I had to wait a minute. I transferred in as a sophomore, and it wasn't until maybe October that he came in and taught a single class. And I remember knocking on his door and just saying, like, I'll do anything. I'll be your intern. Do you have any jobs? I'd love to work with you. I came here for you, in the least creepy way possible, in the most hopeful young person way possible. And he was like, let's do it. So basically from my sophomore year until I left the Brian nest, I became his intern, and then he hired me to be his assistant. And then, most of my 20s, I was his main associate. And I didn't go to grad school. So I consider Brian my grad school. Working with Brian was my grad school. But my teachers at Purchase is interesting because it's 40 minutes outside New York. So you get a lot of there's obviously a main teacher for lighting 1, lighting 2, and lighting 3, which are your sophomore, junior, and senior years. But they also cycle in a lot of guests. And so we got to learn from a lot of voices. And now I'm an adjunct there, which is nice because in New York, you don't need a master's if you have professional experience, which is I'm so grateful because I love teaching. So I'm an adjunct there. And, you know, there's something really nice about um, one, returning to like a really valuable place, and two, what I like about this place is, I'm a voice of many as well as lighting design teachers, and the students might say, Jen, you do it differently, or Dave said to do it like this, and I'm like, well, that's sort of theater. Like, no director is going to say the same thing. Like, of course, the process, everyone will find their process, and there are similarities, but there's also a flexibility needed, which I learned at Purchase. So yeah, I went to Purchase and I graduated and I worked with Brian, and I always knew I wanted to design, though being Brian's assistant and associate I'm so grateful for, and was so fun, and afforded me things, because being an associate on Broadway is a really nicely paying job. So it was hard to leave, because I'm like, okay, now I have to go back to being a designer where I have to crawl my way back again. But he always supported my design. So I, light a show in a dirty, closet with 2 clip lights and a rheostat, and while I'm assisting Brian on like some Broadway play, and eventually that crawl up that ladder, and now I'm a designer, and I design my own shows, and I support my family, and I have health insurance, and all the good things you hope to have as a adult human in this country. Yeah. And I have a 5-year-old, and I'm filling in for a friend doing overnights, and that catches us today.
That's awesome. That's great. Great
That's the
background.
story.
Yeah, that's really fun. So I appreciate all that. And do you take your 5-year-old to, like, has your 5-year-old been immersed in this world, whether he wants to be or not?
Yeah, I mean, he does. He loves it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's so into it. I mean, New York, I'm sure it's different in Texas. And
Yeah.
I was just there because my husband's from Houston, but New York is super strict, at least in theater, about COVID. So 0 to 3.5,
Yeah.
which is when COVID started, he came. I mean, I was back to work when he was 4 weeks old.
Right.
So he came everywhere. And loves it. And then we shut down for a year, and then we came back for a year, but they were really strict about visitors. So he's like, what the heck? Like, I want to come back. And it's just been recently that he's been able to visit the theater, and he's so into it. He draws his own light plots. He draws ground plans,
Wow.
His own version of things, but it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Union approved. What part of Houston is your husband from? Do you know?
He grew up in Kingwood, outside northern Houston suburb, but now his family's like inside the Loop or whatever. Okay. Now his family's
good.
But I don't know what neighborhood they're in.
You got the
terms.
I don't
know the name.
Hey, inside the Loop, it says a lot. So okay. Yeah, very good. Kingwood to inside the Loop. All right. Usually it's the other way around for Houstonians. It's like you kind of grow up near or inside the Loop, and then you're like, I'm going to go to the burbs. But
yeah, I think his parents were like, as children started to leave, they are like active and love, so I think they were like, we have to get closer to the action.
Yeah, saves on travel time and gas money and all that stuff. So, all right, so you answered that question about getting started in the performing arts, so that was great. So you kind of you did very good. It's like we rehearsed it. You sort of touched on this a little bit. You didn't touch on the process itself, but you did talk about, everybody finds their process. So in a nutshell, like if this were an elevator pitch, you have a little bit of time to tell us your process. What is it? I mean, you don't have to go necessarily step by step, but kind of those big key moments there.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm I read the script, obviously, listen to the music. I am bad at reading scripts. Like I have to read them a couple times. Actually, I really, really benefit from hearing it read or reading it out loud. I'm also a bad actor, so like I don't always like sometimes I'll read a script and I'll be like, this isn't a great play, and then I'll hear it read with some brilliant actors, and I'm like, I get it. So, take the time with the script. Don't I try to, understand it and not rush. Which sometimes doesn't, I don't have the chance. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm reading the script on the subway to the meeting. But like, I do a lot of research. I probably do less or don't do it as like wholly as I used to do when I was younger. I was really, really attached to research when I was younger, visual research, going to paintings, going to fine art photographers, creating a sort of like storyboard of research images, sometimes scene by scene. I don't necessarily go that large. Maybe it might be like, this is act one, this is act two, or if it's like Death of a Salesman, like these are the fantasies, these are the reality, like sort of major themes. But I do find visual research helpful. I also find it helpful to talk about how I imagine the play looks with myself, like as if I'm alone, as if someone had a microphone and was like, Jen, what's your idea? So I can sort of, it helps me not only verbalize and my idea, but also helps me solidify my idea because I now have to force to think about it. Sort of, we were taught concepts at Purchase, like read the play, write your point of view, we had to do a visual metaphor, Blanche is blooming through branch is a rose frozen in ice. I mean, that's a bad one, but like, but that really, that part of that, being able to verbalize the sort of poetry of light, is helpful in terms of figuring out what the idea is. So, yeah, I like to do visual research. I like to, find if I could talk about what the light is to my grandmother, she could imagine what it looks like, is a helpful sort of tool for me to find those adjectives that, at this point in my life, those adjectives are like mean something in the light plot to me immediately. Like the adjectives I'm using, I know what kind of lights I need to use or where they need to be. And depending on the director, like hopefully lots of conversations, sometimes not, it really depends. Some directors just want you to show up and like you cross your fingers that you've said the right things and you're on the same page. And some directors want to like meticulously talk through every
Yeah.
detail. And I dig both. I dig both.
Yeah, it's funny how some directors it's just some directors don't know at all what they want from a lighting designer.
Totally.
Yeah, and so
On every scale, like
yeah.
on every, like there are some big time directors who are genius that
Yeah.
that I've, not that I've worked with tons of big time directors, but I'm like meeting more and more. And I'm like, oh, you really don't either care to talk about light,
Yeah.
or you just want to trust, or you have no idea how to talk about light.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And let's hope we're on the same page. Like, so yeah, it's always about like how to sync up with the director. Like
Right.
it's a game of like, you have to have sort of a bunch of tools and like, okay, I'm going to use this with this direct, like, so just as long as like the moonlight I'm talking about, is that the moonlight you're talking
Yeah.
about? Like, are we talking about the same moonlight here?
Yeah, it's funny.
And
I was
yeah,
going to say it's funny you say, because my undergrad was practically all theater design, and it was with Kevin Rigdon, who is the head of design at the University of Houston and a Tony nominee from way back when. But I might have lost you. Did I lose you, Jen? Oh no.
I know. I think we just
Yeah, we
did we
glitched.
freeze?
There was a
We glitched.
there yeah, we're good now.
Okay.
But
Okay. I'm like pausing my drop. I'm like, is my Dropbox thinking? I'm pausing it right now.
okay.
Okay.
But but yeah, so Kevin Rigdon used to say your blue is different than my blue. Um,
Right.
and so you have to get to the kind of root of what a director, when they say, like you said, when they say I want Moonlight, or when they say I want blue or this or that, what is that to them? Because you might show them blue and they're going to be like, that's not at all what I was talking about. So yeah,
Totally.
so it's
Yeah,
funny.
I feel like, yeah, like thesaurus. Like, yeah, for me, like if I had to like design in a deserted island
Yeah,
with like directors I didn't know and I had to bring two things, I would bring like, I don't know, some art anthology
yeah,
or like and a thesaurus.
yeah.
So we could make sure we were on the same
Not a
page.
wrench. You wouldn't bring a wrench, like just to hang the. Okay,
Nah,
just
nah, I'd
just
like hire
yeah.
someone else.
It's just all foot lighting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's good. You kind of. I love what you said about the script, because I actually just talked about this with my wife, and she never knew this about me. And I was told the key to marriage is to learn something new about your significant other every day. But anyway, I
Ah,
digress. Yeah,
good key.
it's good. It's good. I learned that from an old wise woman. But I I was telling my wife how it takes me a while to understand a script. I can't just read it once and then boom,
Same.
be ready to go. And so I appreciate that you said that, because now, my style is justified. So that's good. Have you ever been given
Yeah,
have
you're
you?
cool.
Thank you. Thanks. Good. Have you ever been given a script that it just didn't click with you, and you had almost zero, and you don't need to name the script, and you had almost zero ideas, and then like you said, you walked into the table read, or that kind of first rehearsal for you, and that's when it was like, got it.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally has happened. Also the other way where I've read a script and I'm like, crap, I don't connect to this and I never did.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it just,
Yeah, it
you
just
know,
happens.
never happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. So you already you again you did a very good job of answering the follow-up question, so I'm not going to ask you that. But
Oh
uh
shit.
no, you did a great. It was fine. What are a few elements that to your process that still give you doubt? And the clarity that I was going to kind of give to you was, again, going back to Kevin Rigdon. He always used to say, and it's kind of imposter syndrome a little bit. He always used to say, I'm waiting to walk into a theater and everybody find out I'm a fraud.
Oh yeah.
And mind you, he's mostly lighting and scenery. And with lighting, like we've already kind of alluded to, is that there's almost no wrong answer. Because it's almost open to interpretation. But he would always
I
he
think
would
I just oh, I
it keeps going in and out.
Wi-Fi, I think.
It could
You
be
were saying he walks into the theater, he
yeah,
thinks he's an imposter.
and he always wonders if somebody's going to eventually figure out. And even to this day, the man's in his late 60s, early 70s. I honestly don't know. I hope he's not listening. But he still feels that he's going to be found out, be by a director, and that they're just there to turn on some lights and turn them off, kind of thing. So
Totally.
is there an element to your process that kind of still gives you doubt? It makes you feel as though you kind of don't belong, or is it all of it? Is it the entire thing?
Always. I mean, I don't know. It's funny. My husband's like, "Oh, we're at that part of the process." When I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I can't wait till you're a genius.
Yeah,
Like, wait till, you know." I mean, for me, in terms of like the worst part of the process ever, where I feel that the most, definitely day one of tech, like the first day.
got it.
Focus, I'm fine. Meeting directors, I'm fine. Talking ideas, I'm fine. All of that stuff. The first day of tech is like miserable. Like I you know, I know this is obvious and I say this all the time, like, students, but I'm like, the set designer gets a model, the costume designer can put on all the real clothes, the sound designer can play the cues, the video designer could like take a tiny projector and like project it onto the scenic model if they wanted to. I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch, but like the, yeah, the sound designer can play all the sound cues. Like everybody can do everything in advance. And we have our poetry and our like, Caravaggios and
Yeah,
like
that's funny.
and yeah. So, and also we're always behind. Like if the set's behind, lights behind. Like we're
Yeah,
always affected by, you know, the set everything's going to be further along typically. I mean, sometimes there are rare cases, but
yeah,
like everything affects the lighting schedule. So,
Right.
day one, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I mean, I do this is why the homework does help. Um, but I walk out of day one like
Yeah.
miserable. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to compose an image. I don't know how to lay out front light. I don't know, like everything. I
In
feel
your
like
own mind. In your own mind.
yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
in my own
Not that
mind.
you don't know what you're doing. I
No,
don't.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
no, in my mind,
yeah.
I'm doubting all of those things. And then day two, or at some point, I mean, it's funny, it's shortening now. Like sometimes it'll happen in the midst of day one, and I'm like, okay, I'm back. I'm here. I
Yeah.
am. I'm okay. Um, and then the groove happens, and then it's better, and then it comes back again the first run through when like you go back to the beginning and everything's terrible again and timings don't work, because you didn't really take your time to tech this transition or whatever. Um, and I take it all personally
Yeah.
and like, judge myself that it's like, it does get better. Like it's not, I was probably more insecure in my 20s than I am now, but it's still like day one is so sad.
Yeah.
Day one is the worst. Day one of tech. Um, yeah.
And
And
so
then hopefully, I mean, I feel like I don't leave a show that I'm not like pleased with.
right.
Like I'm sure there are rare circumstances that are out of my control, but I know I've done my best.
Right.
And that is reassuring too in
So
the day one.
so
Yeah,
in the real world though, you have tech and then previews and you get to kind of edit and finagle throughout all that, correct?
totally. So
So
like I've just like first preview audience is probably getting the worst version of the lighting. And hopefully they don't know that, but I know
yeah.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, but do you ever? Because like for me, I've never designed in New York. I've acted in New York, but that's a different story. But hair flip. But do you watch your own shows once it is out of previews, once it is officially open, and
Yeah.
do you like sit there and think, oh, I should have done this, or have you already kind of fine tooth comb everything so you feel really good about it?
I hate to admit this, but I think like I'm like taking mental notes on opening night. Like I'm like, oh, I should have done that. Like I
Yeah.
have a really hard time. Not that I'm not like happy with it, but
Right.
I'm always like could tinker. Like, oh, that could be 1 second faster.
Right.
So it's like a self practice to just let it go, let it go. Um, I I haven't had a show that's run super long yet. That's part of like this goal, but I have Strange Loop that's running right now
Right.
that's open ended. And that opened in April and still running. So they've just released tickets to January. So like I feel like I will go back and check on it
Right.
and like there's a lot of, I only have 2 follow spots and there's a lot of isolated moments, so a lot of specials, and there are understudies going on. So I'm like curious to make sure that people are like finding
Hitting.
it's a
Yeah.
very dark show and you kind of have to find um, so I'm interested to go back and watch that and see how it's going.
Yeah.
But no, I usually don't go back
Stay
after.
away.
It's better to just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
So, and congratulations, by the way. I didn't open with that with the Strange Loop, but big moment for you. I do have a question that wasn't on the list.
Yeah, bring it.
Just out of curiosity, how does the notification of the nomination work? Like, I'm just curious how that works for you. Like,
How do you find out you're
do they
nominated?
just send you an email and say, "Hey, congrats"? You're
No, they do a live like YouTube announcement of all the nominees. So you
so
all
that's
find
how
out
you find
together.
out.
Yeah.
Oh, so there's no so it's the same way the
So
public finds out. Oh,
so
wow.
I was in the Delta Sky Club at like 9 in the morning, flying from Boston to waiting for my flight out of Boston to come home.
Wow.
And I got there a little early just because I wanted to watch it. So I was just like, had my laptop open and I was like logging on and I got on right as like, because they start with scenic
Yeah.
designers. And my friend Arnolfo was nominated. Actually, so many of my friends, it's the first time I'm like, oh, like a lot of these people are my friends
Yeah.
and peers, and also, people I love and admire, a generation above me or whatever. But I was like weeping in the sky. It was just a beautiful moment. Like I was just weeping in the Sky Club. People are having their early morning like commuter coffee. I'm like, this is beautiful.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yep,
That's really
that's
cool.
how.
Yeah, shout out to the Sky Club.
Thanks.
So a few more questions, then I'm gonna get you out of here so you can go entertain your 5-year-old, and I guess I should do the
Thanks.
same. But you kind of alluded to this as well, and that's good. It leads into this. Do you feel there's a right or wrong way of designing?
I I don't. I
Okay.
mean, I think that like it's funny. I think that there's a helpful way to teach design, and then I think that like all artists, you take the skills that you take what is useful to you, and maybe you innovate,
Yeah.
and maybe you fail, maybe you don't innovate, maybe and what is failing? I mean, I don't know. Like I think in terms of art, that's probably not a thing.
Right.
There are people who like the way I light. I'm sure there are people that don't like the way I light. There's definitely lighting designers that are massive, and I don't necessarily do what they do, or do it the way they do it, and they have a great career,
Right.
so uh I would say probably in theater, which is a collaborative art form, probably the biggest wrong way would be not to collaborate
Yeah.
with your friends and colleagues. Would be the easiest and most definable way to fail.
Right.
But in terms of lighting design, I mean, I like to see people's faces, but like, I I think like no, figuring out how to connect to the actor's face and facial expressions is helpful, and then also make that your fold into the artistic heightened experience of whatever that is you're doing is helpful. But no, I don't know. I don't think there's a wrong way.
Yeah.
I think you like any painter is learning how to use the brushes and how to mix the paint, is then I'm sure some extreme brilliant artist is going to take what they know and throw it out and figure out their own way.
Yeah.
And yeah.
You made me think of something else. Have you done like concert lighting, like for recording artists or music artists?
Not intentionally.
Okay.
I
Okay.
I was hired to do this like venue opening. This huge venue opened, and they hired me to like do
Okay.
do light all these
Right.
bands, these amazing artists, and it was so fun. And I would love to do that
Did
again.
you
It was really,
did you
yeah.
find that the reason I bring it up, again, selfishly bringing it up, I used to tour as a lighting designer with an a cappella group, and one of the things that their fans appreciated was that I have a theater background, and so they could always see their faces of these guys that were singing to them and the expressions, and it was a very theatrical lighting
Right.
for like not rock and roll, it was a cappella, but as close to rock and roll as a cappella could be. So that's just selfishly why I bring that up, is because did
Yeah.
you find yourself lighting them more theatrically rather than, it's tough to go to strobe lights all the time and quote flash and trash.
Right.
um
Well, I think if there's
I lost you again.
this to New York connection is sad today.
Well, say, so I lost you, but say it was at the beginning of
No,
your
I said
thought.
I
So
I I like to call it flash in class, and I'm
okay.
like, find your flash in class. Um, but like yeah, of course, there's moments to deploy the flash and
Yeah.
trash or the strobes, but I do think like if you can't have the important key moments to connect to someone's face, I
Yeah.
mean that like gives you so like that's it's so important, I think, for actors and for the audience, to even with music, with anything,
Right.
to and it doesn't mean it has to be bright as all get out.
Yeah.
It can be really well done, or really nuanced. But I do think like figuring out how to make sure someone we can see someone's expressions, their
Right.
eye sockets, their eyebrow raise,
Yeah.
is also helpful to the lighting design.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there a style of theater that you prefer?
Well, I used to love new plays, like
Okay.
weird new plays. That's like I want to do all the weird new plays downtown. As I grow up and like realize I need like I have bills to pay and a family to raise, I'm
Yeah.
like I also like musical theater. Um, that in New York can be a nice paycheck.
Yeah.
But I not always. But I like new work. I mean, I really do, and I like working with interesting, creative people.
Yeah.
So I would say like new work, figuring out something new is the best, and working with collaborators that like to play.
Yeah. Do you dive into
Yeah.
dance?
Not really.
Okay.
I did when like I sort of like I do it. I did some
Right.
recently, but like I'm not really plugged in
It's a different
to that.
world. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a whole different set of
Yeah.
designers. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very protective, I have found.
Yeah, I mean, I love
Yeah.
watching it and
Yeah.
I love what they do. I'm always like seeing like dance designers photos on Instagram or whatever, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's so pretty.
Yeah.
That's so
There are things
pretty."
you
But
can
I don't.
take away from it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, last question for you. It's a big one. So,
Okay. Bring it.
you have to be you have to analyze self analysis here. Where do you still feel you can grow as an artist?
Ooh. Um, I
Pulls out the scroll of things. Yeah.
yeah, no kidding. Seriously. Let's get my therapist on the line. No, just kidding. Uh, I I think I I mean so many
Yeah,
ways.
sure.
In terms of like art, um, I think gosh, this is a hard one.
I'll,
I did not prepare. I did not
yeah,
prepare for this.
I can edit this kind of
Yeah,
this thought process out. Yeah. No,
yeah,
it's okay.
yeah. I think like um I mean, there's lots of practical ways I can improve, which
Sure.
is I am really slow to generate the light plot. Like my light plots are always a week late. If you know, like it takes me a while to get started. So I would say definitely I could know that better about myself and start sooner. So I'm not rushing at the end to hit a deadline. Um, I would also say, um, I mean, something I think I overcame already is like I used to be really resistant to what felt like a bad idea.
Right.
I'm doing air quotes, like from a director or collaborator. Like, no, I know it's not supposed to be that. And I think like I'm much better now at trying, like, yeah, just saying yes. Yeah,
Right.
let's try it. Because they're responding to something. I think some people just try to be prescriptive in how to solve it, but sometimes you learn from that. You learn from what it's wrong and you're going to go down that path, but like it might reveal something else to you, or it might simply reveal that they were right and
Right.
you should have tried it. So I try to continue to remember that, because my like strong-willed instinct sometimes is to just know, feel like I know, and also feel rushed in the room, like we're going to run out of time, or I'm not going to have time to light the big end of act 2 or whatever if we try this thing I know is wrong that's going to take an hour and we're going to have to undo it. But I would say 70 to 90% of the time it's a worthy task
Right.
to to respond positively and attempt whatever it is. And a small percentage of the time, you're right, you aren't going to light act 2, and you need to shut that idea down. And yes, that is part, but I think remembering, allowing time for creative process with your collaborators and being generous to their questions, and not feeling like I know it all, or my plan is the right way. Or reading into question. I mean, it's all psychology,
Yeah.
really. It's like, oh, these are things I'm working on. Reading into someone's suggestion, trying to assume I know what they're asking. Like, not, sometimes can be like, well, no, it's not that, and they're like, no, that's not what I was asking. So I think continually practicing to be like generous and open to my collaborators and not defensive and hitting my deadlines.